What was that? All right, it's 7 o'clock by iPad time, and I would like to call the Kimberley City Regular Council meeting to order for Monday, May the 29th, held here on the homelands of the Ktunaxa peoples. We have a couple of late items, both of correspondence, pardon me, that we need to receive. Before we do that, Maurice, are there any other late items?
So the items that were added to the agenda as late items are correspondence related to the step code changes and bylaw 2745, for which there's a notice of motion on the agenda. And there was an email related to the public hearing for Marysville rezoning proposal. We have received more correspondence related to Marysville since the cutout time for the agenda on Wednesday. Those will be added to the next agenda and on June 12th. And we also have received the petition that will be added to the June 12th agenda. Staff requested a change to the resolution related to the public hearing setting. So there's a new resolution in the agenda.
So is that part of the addition, part of the late items?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's a third item then?
Yeah, it's already on the agenda, but it's a change to the report.
Right, okay. All right, thank you, Maurice. So having said that then, could I have a mover to receive the correspondence related to the step code changes? Councillor Royer makes the move, and Councillor Donneback seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? Is that in favor or opposed, Woody?
That was in favor.
Okay, sorry, man. The hand came up a little. I was talking a little faster than your hand. Okay, that motion is carried. Second up, could I have a mover to accept the correspondence regarding the public hearing? Councillor Cairns moves. Councillor Donneback seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, with that then, could I have a mover to adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor Roberts, thank you. And Councillor Royer seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up, we have adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on May the 15th. Mover, please. Councillor Roberts, thank you. Councillor Royer seconds. Any opposed? That motion is carried. And that's it for the formalities. Next up, we do have a delegation this evening. Sergeant Woodcox.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Mayor.
have your fourth quarter report.
Yeah, so I'm here to present the fourth quarter report, and that encompasses the months of January to March 2023. What I can say for this fiscal year, calls were up 13% from the same fiscal year last year, and that was for the most part with half the staff members. So I just want to thank everyone at the office for taking on some extra work. It was difficult, but we all got through it. We've recently just got 2 members to come here to fill some of the long-term ODS positions, the long-term sick positions. So we're almost up to full capacity. I think we're 1 member that's off ODS right now. So things are improving in that way. So that's positive.
Great news.
Yes. One thing I wanted to speak about that I spoke about last quarter was property crime. I know last quarter I spoke, we had a dramatic increase in property crime, and that was due to 2 or 3 offenders that were coming here on a nightly visit to do crime in our community. We have 2 or 3 of those offenders that are finally in custody. I have to tell you, it took 35 to 40 criminal charges before those people were kept in custody. And that's the battle sometimes that we face. We have to get a large number of offenses, especially when it's property crime. The court does not seem to take property crime as important as violent crime, but I can tell you when you go to someone's home and it's been broken into, people don't feel safe after that. So some of these offenders are in jail, and there's probably 2 or 3 offenders that have conditions not to enter the city of Kimberley. So when they do, we can take action and arrest them. So all those things in concert have dropped property crime by 40%. Those offenders were drug addicts. And that's what I've seen from my 24-year career. It's people that are looking to break into places to get drugs, or sorry, to get stolen property for money to buy drugs. And this was no different. We had 2 or 3 people that were committing crime. And to be honest with you, they do not fear prosecution. And that's part of the problem. But like I said, because so many charges were brought against them from us, and Cranbrook had the same issues with the same individuals. So after a length of time, thank God some of those people are in jail. For how long, I don't know. But right now things have improved, so that's a positive step. Mental health, I know I talk about that on regular occasion. That is not improved or decreased. We still see calls related to mental health. We do see an increase in calls for well-being checks. And I think that's because there's a lot of people that live alone in a community, and people are calling on us daily to check on people. And I think that's good. It gives people peace of mind. And sometimes we've even gone and been able to brought services to people that are living alone that need those services brought to them. So sometimes we can go be that conduit to bring some resources to those individuals. So there's positive things to come when people call and get us to do well-being checks. One thing I want to mention, I know I mentioned it before, when it comes to fraud and online scams, I can't say enough. If you do not know the individuals that you're buying stuff from, if you've never met them, never seen the property that is about to be sold to you, do not send people money that you do not know. And I suggested before, if you're gonna meet people for property to sell, a good place to meet them is in the parking lot of the Kimberley detachment. I say that over and over again. Or if you're gonna meet someone, get a license plate, get something, so if something goes sideways and you do get ripped off, there's some investigative avenue that we can follow up. So if you get a license plate, you can say, I met this person, don't know who he is, here's his license plate. But sometimes we're still seeing it where people are sending thousands of dollars online to people. And I can tell you, every account online is a false name, a false person. And as soon as you send money, that account is closed. And it's nearly impossible for the police to follow up on that. So we just see it on a daily thing. So if you have a friend that's doing that, convince them maybe to call us at the police station. Say, this is what's going on. If the deal's too good to be true, we probably shouldn't do it. So that's just one thing. I still see that happening. But like I say to people all the time, if someone doesn't want to meet you in a public place, it can be the Save-On parking lot, it can be the police station. If they don't want to meet you, don't meet them. Then that never happens, right? And a lot of people are being taken advantage of that are elderly, living alone. But like I said, if you have any questions, call the police station. We're always there. We have 3 ladies that work there that would love to talk to you. If it's not one of us, that would probably tell you that's probably not a good deal. And we don't like to see people get victimized either, but it's a daily occurrence. So I just wanted to bring that up to council. We're still quite involved with the schools, and that includes talks about drugs. I think Kimberley is not immune to drugs. I know the bigger cities, and Cranbrook's a bigger city than Cranbrook or than Kimberley. There's a huge drug problem in Cranbrook. We don't have as bad of a problem, but we still don't have the same drugs that are coming here. And it's important to get into schools and talk to these kids. Back in January, we had illegal drugs legalized. So now you can legally have drugs up to 2.5 grams and legally use it. So it's very difficult to go into schools and tell the kids don't use drugs when we're having everything legalized. So we're still going in there. And part of that is building relationships with the kids. There's been many a time where kids have used drugs and there's been problems at home. Those relationships we build at school continue outside of school. And that's all we can hope is those kids that we've dealt with and talked to school remember us by name, and maybe when they have a bad day, we're there to help them. And when I say help them, maybe we're there to help them get some help for their problems, for their drug problems, and for their family as well. There's a lot of resources in our office. We have victim services that sometimes we engage with the families, and sometimes that's what they need. But yeah, the drugs problem, the same drugs, I always say, the same drugs that are killing people in Cranbrook are the same drugs that are coming to this community. And we've had overdose deaths in this community as well. So we just have to look out for each other, and especially the youth. So we still remain engaged in the schools, and I'm very proud to have that. That's probably it for me. I'm very open to take any questions, but that's kind of what we've seen happen in the last quarter. I want to mention one thing before I forget. The RCMP is rolling out the body worn cameras. So that is going to be tested in certain areas around the province, and Cranbrook and Kimberley is going to be part of that. So I have a meeting in early June to see where that rolls out, but I think our communities are going to be a part of that. I'm very much in favor of those body worn cameras. I think it shows exactly what the police are dealing with. There's nothing to hide. Everything's out in the open. And I think the public wants that as well. And I think the public needs to see that. So that's slowly rolling out, but I think our communities are going to be part of that. So.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the report and for the great comments, Steve.
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
Thanks, Sergeant Woodcox. I have a little bit of my own social commentary, and then just maybe a quick question for you. It seems to me like the last couple of years since I guess since the pandemic, and just kind of the trend that we're seeing globally is there's definitely social and economic inequities in our society, and those seem to be magnifying some of the problems that we're seeing, whether it's mental health or drug use or just not being able to keep up, in general. And I can clearly hear some frustration on your side, especially when you're talking about the property crimes, which a lot of times, as you say, it stems from drug use or mental health things. My question to you is, are you seeing any light at the end of the tunnel with respect to how you and your team operates, or the RCMP in general, as far as resourcing and helping with the problem in these rural areas? I know in the past, there's been a lot of focus on the big cities and some of the core problems in those larger centers, but are you guys starting to see a recognition and maybe offering some additional resources to help you out in these smaller towns?
Yeah, I don't know about resources. We're not really seeing an increase in resources. We are seeing some reforms to the bail. And I don't know what all those entail yet. I'm hopeful that some of these property crime offenders are taken more seriously, because I think sometimes the court looks at these and doesn't take them as seriously as the violent offenders or offenses against people. But like I said earlier, when someone breaks into someone's home, they never feel safe again. And I think that's where the court is falling a little bit short and putting a little bit more importance on the property crime. And these offenders are drug addicts. These offenders are never going to stop committing crime until they're going into treatment. And I do think we need more treatment. So we've legalized drugs, but I don't know if the treatment beds and the treatment resources have kept up. And like I said, until that avenue where these offenders have to go to treatment for their own well-being, these property offenders will never stop. I've seen this for 24 years in larger cities that I've worked in. And I think that's where some time and some resources need to be spent, is for the rehabilitation of people. And I think once that happens, maybe some of these offenders will change, because if we're just legalizing drugs and they're committing crime, getting money, doing drugs, that's where this cycle just continues. And the thing is, we see these people that are victimized every day, and we go to the same call and we'll watch a video and it's the same individual again. And all we have to do is put our head down and continue to charge these people until they get enough. I'm hoping some of the bail reform addresses some of that. But that's where I think some of the resources need to be put. And I hope that answers your question.
No, that was great. It was more of a, like I said, it was a kind of a social commentary into what I've seen and, more broadly. And I think you kind of summed it up at the challenges you're facing here. So just a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little I have laryngitis, let's put it that way. That's the easiest way to explain. I'll try to make myself heard. I note that there's a fairly high number of files that are assisting other detachments. What do you do exactly with assisting other detachments? Is that about the file only, or are you sending members to other detachments? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so assisting other detachments, sometimes we get requests from other detachments to interview people, arrest people on outstanding warrants. It's just assisting other detachments to deal with individuals in a way of taking statements or arrest them that maybe they live in this jurisdiction now, and we're being asked to take action for other detachments. So that's what that encompasses. We're not sending any members anywhere at this time, no.
Thank you.
Further? One last question for me, Steve. I noticed one of the other items that dropped fairly dramatically was animal reports. What exactly is animal report and what's changed?
Yeah, so animal reports can be reports of vehicles striking deers. Animal reports can be people getting bit by dogs, those things. So I don't know. I mean, every now and again, it's kind of one of those things that go up and down. So one quarter it may be low, another quarter it may be not. Maybe it's bear in the area, and maybe, like I said, a deer that got struck.
Okay.
That needs to be put down, those kind of things. And there's no real reason why that's up and down.
So we're about to hit fawning season, so we may see an increase again next quarter.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Last call, council. Questions, comments? Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve.
I appreciate the time.
Yep, thanks for being here. Okay, next up, we have a couple of items, 3 items actually under bylaws. First up is the zoning amendment for the light industrial zone, currently identified as M2. And the motion on the floor is that an electronic public hearing for this bylaw 2738 be scheduled for the regular meeting of council on Monday, June 26th at 7 p.m. Mover, please. Councillor Royer moves. Seconded, Councillor Cairns. Discussion. Ariane, are you going to talk to this one?
Please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So staff have been drafting some amendments to the light industrial and M2 zone as a way to modernize some of the language and also create flexibility by adding more use categories to better reflect changing industrial trends. So council provided first reading to the proposed bylaw at the February 13th meeting. Following this meeting, staff forwarded the application to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. And the ministry noted that where a landscape buffer is required for parcels abutting Highway 95A, that there be clear sightlines and that the buffer not interfere with highway maintenance. These recommendations have been integrated into the proposed bylaw since that February 13th meeting. And at this time, staff are recommending that an electronic public hearing be scheduled for Monday, June 26th. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the intro. Council, comments or questions? Councillor McBain, go ahead.
Well, I just had one comment kind of through this whole process, and I think part of it is, well, hopefully maybe make Ariane feel a little bit better. You know, when we started this process, we had some recommendations. We had that report that was provided to us, and there was a lot of contradictory, or there was a lot of things within the proposal that were maybe contradictory to the OCP, and and I recognize that, and staff went through a lot of effort to put that through. But the one thing I just wanted to kind of get on the table here, that I'm glad that we rejected that report, and the reason that I'm glad that we rejected the report is not to make a decision yet or one way or the other, is to get this discussion on where we're at today and all the comments that we received. This is the democratic process, and it's been really beneficial to get the feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. I've really appreciated it. It's helped me understand a lot of where people are coming from through this process. And had we just kind of went ahead and said, okay, we're going to accept this report, things would have kind of been halted in a way, and we wouldn't have got some of the feedback that we've got. So I think this is just a comment back to staff. Sometimes, you can draft up a really great report, and the feedback might not seem like it's positive, but it's still serving a purpose. And I think it has served us really, really well up to here. And I know other people are going to have some other discussion points, but I just wanted to make that clarification that this is a conversation that was either going to be happening now or 5 years from now or at some point, and it did need to happen. And even though maybe it wasn't fun for staff to go through that the rejection of the report, it's been a really helpful process so far.
Thanks, Councillor McBain. Further, Council? Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, I believe we're talking about the changes to the zoning for M2 for that entire region. So we're talking about in light industrial changes to modernize that zoning. And
Correct.
I like the idea of having more modern language and language that encourages people to develop within our light industrial zones. So I fully support this, and I will support moving it to a public hearing.
Awesome. Thanks, Councillor McGuire. Councillor Dunneback, go ahead.
It's nice to see the communication amongst everybody, and looking forward on our future of Kimberley. And as we grow, we're going to need space, and people need space to build their future as well. Everybody fits into the cookie cutter of going to work for somebody else, and to have a space where somebody could be potentially makers, fabricators, artisans, all that sort of stuff, to have an opportunity for them, I think is a really good idea moving forward. And I support this discussion.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you. Further? Okay, I've got a couple of comments. First of all, I as well completely support the movement that's going on with this M2 rezone. In fact, it's been fun to see it on the table. We've been talking about modernizing kind of M2 for a while now. A couple of things inside the report, though, I want to just highlight. The first has to do with self-storage. There's clearly a demand for self-storage in the community. And if that particular location is not appropriate or will not be part of the zone, I think we need to know exactly where it would be acceptable, because that demand for self-storage is not going to go away. And the nature of that has to do with, space, etc. So I think we need to take a look at not just what we want somewhere, but the things that we're excluding. We need to take a look at where else in the community is that appropriate. I also think that, I don't know, often over the past few years, we have bemoaned the Lower Mainland policies, or policies that have been made in the Lower Mainland, for the negative impact it has on us on many fronts, the whole one-size-fits-all thing. And we need to have made in Kimberley policies and bylaws that reflect our needs, not just the principles involved, but the actual needs that we have. I guess a good example of that has to do with light industrial lands versus larger commercial. Our situation with light industrial actually is pretty good. If we take a look at 1 acre per parcel, which is kind of what the average parcel size is in the Marysville Business Park, we have approximately, 20 parcels available there, and another 18 potential parcels on the benchland adjoining Jim Ogilvie Way. So this represents about 40 acres worth of inventory. And at the rate that we've been having light industry actually show up and look at building here in Kimberley, that represents at least 40 years of opportunity that we have. It's a long time. And that doesn't even include some of the conversations that we're having with tech on the possibility of making sure that there was a business park associated with the industrial lands up in tech. So, I think on the other hand, we have absolutely zero larger commercial space available. We have lots of infill for things like professional services and so on, but nothing for, for some of the some of the larger opportunities that come along. I think it's important to note that those larger commercial represent 2.5 times the tax revenue, additional services, and many other benefits that come along with it. So we just need to make sure that we've got some balance on what the actual needs within the community are. I think, I guess my last comment would be that any modernizing of the zone and taking a look at what our specific needs are, we need to have a broader look at development and what the contribution of broader development is and where it fits inside the city. Our topography is very unique. I mean, for 60 square kilometers, 51% of it is green space. And of what's left, it's a very narrow corridor of mostly residential spaces. And we are really challenged when it comes to places to locate light industrial. So I think all of those, that whole development strategy and who we're trying to attract and what all of that is needs to be part of the consideration. And I hope that as we move forward with this particular initiative, that we have that broader conversation and, end up in that. So it's awesome to see this on the table, and hopefully as we go through the process, we'll be able to provide the requirements or refine the requirements, I should say. Go ahead, Troy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to comment on a few of your remarks there, just for some clarification.
Yeah.
So just to remind council that this is presently a text-only amendment. So we're just revising or proposing to amend the text of the M2 zone. It doesn't rezone any parcels that are otherwise zoned. So the Marysville Industrial Park now is a mix of M1 and M2 zoning. So the lands north of 303rd Street, those are parts of the M2 lands. And then there's a couple other areas within the community. One is Knighton Road area, and also over at the northeast entrance to town there, the Tyee Yard and that area there. So those are the key areas where these if eventually adopted by council, that where these lands or the new zoning would apply to. You mentioned about the potential for other parcels along Jim Ogilvie Way. Those lands are presently still zoned M1, so there would need to be a map amendment or something to that effect to have this zoning apply to that. And I just wanted to go back to the comments about the self-storage. That's one where we did not include it in the list of uses proposed in the M2. And that's for a couple of reasons. Is one, we recognize there's definitely demand for that. But it, when we do have a fairly limited M2 land base or zoned land base, and if we're trying to reserve those lands for other, I would say more productive uses or more higher employment generating uses, certainly self-storage operations are good revenue sources for the owner. They're, fairly low cost to create and maintain. Certainly there's some employment in the creation of them, but from a longer term community perspective, there's apart from that they provide a certain service, but that's one of those uses I think that could go in other areas or even on some of those M1 zone lands with some other zoning amendments. But in some of those, so anyway, back to my key point about that is if council agrees that self-storage use should be included in the amended M2 zone, then that would be some direction to council or direction to staff to amend the bylaw to add that as a permissible use and make sure that that's part of the consideration.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks for that, Troy. So we've got many steps of the process to go. We're going to get lots of feedback as we're going along, and we'll have an opportunity to flush that out further. Go ahead, Councillor Dunavac.
I just want to talk a little bit about the storage. It's definitely a huge need here as you see all the people moving with toys and all that stuff, and it's awesome. I'm just wondering if we'd be setting some sort of standard that it has an aesthetically pleasing look and not be a yard stacked full of sea cans. Something that's like an actual compound that looks nice and professional and looks appealing as you drive through. Just make it look a little
yeah absolutely fair comment. Did you want to follow up?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the challenges is you know, we, even with the other uses, we do, you know, we regulate what kinds of uses, what kinds of development are allowed. There is standards for, you know, for building height, structure height, you know, site coverage, setback from property lines, that kind of thing. But it is pretty hard to manage that kind of quality or the appearance of it. I mean, there can be development parent processes that help to manage some of that, but over the long term, there can be a, you know, a degradation of the quality and managing the, like you said, the C-can containers, that kind of thing. That stuff can really be hard to maintain those kind of quality standards over time. So.
If I can just make
Further?
one more
Go ahead.
comment on that. I guess I'm just sort of referring to, like, as I drive up the valley towards Golden, and you see those beautiful new storage facilities that they built on this side of the highway there by Invermere, to have something like that where it's just professional and clean looking. It'd be nice to have some sort of standard like that, I think.
Thanks for the comments, Kevin. Okay, council, further? So we'll call the question then, and this is a back to see what the exact motion was. It was the public hearing. So all those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Excellent. Okay, next up, we have the OCP bylaw and zoning bylaw amendment for 361 315th Avenue. And the motion on the floor is that an in-person public hearing for the OCP amendment for this property be scheduled for Tuesday, June 27th at 7 p.m. at McKim Theater, located at 689 Rotary Drive. And further, that an electronic phone-in public hearing for OCP amendment bylaw 2732 and 2733 be scheduled for Wednesday, June 28th at 7 p.m. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Royer, thank you. Seconded, Councillor McBain. All right. Discussion.
And I just wanted to mention this. My previous comment was supposed to be to this thing, and I don't have it in front of me right now. So I just wanted to clarify that.
That's okay, Jason. I think we got that.
Yeah.
Thank
okay.
you.
Good.
Okay. Discussion. All right. Hearing none. Called. Okay. Go ahead, Troy.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add some clarification, as I know we did propose a late change here to the recommendation. So I just wanted to provide some clarification there
Go ahead,
about
please.
that and about the purpose overall of the report here. So there's two main components. One is we wanted to update council on the status of this bylaw proposal. Council may recall is given first reading by council on February 13th. Since then, we had been waiting on review and findings of the transportation impact assessment for the project. There's been some back and forth between the Ministry of Transportation and the city and the proponent, and that process is still not, I guess, finished quite yet. But we're at a point where we're able to report back to council about some of the findings there. And that's summarized in the report, but I'll just do a real brief overview there. So the report findings recommend or warrant that there be traffic signals at the intersection of Highway 95A and 315th Avenue. And the ministry policy is that anytime traffic signals are warranted, that there also be additional review for roundabout design as a preference to more signals. The findings of the report also indicate that illumination lighting for the intersection is required for both the highway intersection and the site access intersection. And then also some well, depending on the roundabout versus signalization question, probably some lane width widening and some changes to road symbols on the road surface or that kind of stuff. So the ministry clarified that that because those requirements are development driven, that they be installed at the expense of the proponent. One of the other aspects was the need or the suggestion for a need for a pedestrian connection from the Jim Ogilvie Way, Highway 95A intersection, which is right at the arena and the Marysville Elementary School, and have a pathway or sidewalk extended to 315th Avenue to support more active transportation connection to that site. So there's still some more back and forth on that with the ministry and the applicant, but that's what we wanted to make sure that council was aware of for now. And then, of course, also recommendation around public hearing. We changed from our initial proposal when we were working on a report last week. That really had a lot to do with just thinking through some of the challenges with the logistics on managing the public hearing. There's been dozens of written submissions to date on this matter at each meeting since then. We're anticipating that there will be significant interest from the community members wanting to participate in a public hearing process. So we've amended our recommendation there to propose two pre-scheduled, two pre-planned public hearings. So one would be in person only to be held at McKim Theater. And we're recommending Tuesday, June the 27th. I'll get into a second that there is some date options there if council doesn't feel that works. And then follow that up with a secondary public hearing for telephone participation only. So council would be in the regular council chamber, and we'd be able to better manage the telephone traffic. Trying to do both of those at the same time in one meeting is we just don't think it's going to be kind of logistically possible with the resources available. So that's why the change for the meeting there. Sorry, and I don't think I said the date. The telephone hearing, we're recommending Wednesday, June 28th. So both of those would be a special meeting of council to allow ample time for submissions to be received and heard. And like I said, there is some potential date options at McKim Theater if council doesn't feel that date works well for them.
So that's right. Councillor Cairns.
Thank you. Thanks, Troy. And just wondering why the date, I'm glad to see the change, and why the date wouldn't be June the 19th for the public, for the in-person public hearing.
Too many things. It gives us that extra week following this meeting, assuming council proceeds with the public hearing, to just make sure we get all of the notice requirements taken care of properly and accurately, most importantly. And then the other thing is that the applicant did mention that they're not available on the 19th. They did mention about the 26th date, but so we're presuming that they would be available the 27th and 28th. The applicant or other community members, if they're not available on any of the scheduled dates of the public hearing, they are able to submit comments in writing prior to the hearing, or even during the hearing, I guess, or otherwise try to participate either at the in-person or the telephone hearing.
Okay. Is it okay
Further?
if I continue?
Yep, go
I
ahead.
have actually quite a few questions. Is the proponent aware of the highways requirements, the traffic light, highway widening, and possible roundabout? And it would be the proponent who would be responsible for paying? Is that what I understood?
I think the applicant should be aware because their consultants are the ones that prepared the studies and the reports and the findings being discussed and been involved in some of the back and forth with the ministry. We've not had extensive conversations around, the cost and how that's going to work. We've been more worried about getting those initial comments back to council and preparing for this next stage of the process here.
Okay, thank you. I have more questions, but I'll turn it over to others and then join in.
Further, council? Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, I just had a question about process. We approved first reading on this based on the information presented on the February meeting. And now we're moving to public hearing. I'm just curious if we don't, do we have to go to public hearing because we've done one reading? Is that how it works? Or is there an option here to not go to public hearing and vote this down at this point? I'm just curious. I don't know who can answer that, but.
Go ahead, Troy.
I would say that there's no, legal or legislated obligation for council to proceed to public hearing. It is a natural progression to go to public hearing after first reading's been provided. I'll remind council that a public hearing needs to be held somewhere between first and third reading before any zoning or OCP bylaw can be adopted. I think that, there's some merit either way, I guess there, but I think if council's indicated their intent to consider first reading and consider the bylaw, we certainly have heard from some community members, but there may be other community members that want to provide their comments and their thoughts on the bylaw, whether that be for or against the proposal. So our recommendation is to proceed to scheduling a public hearing to hear from any community members, whether they've already submitted comments before or whether they're new or whichever.
Thanks for that.
Go ahead.
So there were comments there were comments from Interior Health that the letter on the area being unserviced and the large amount of water use and wastewater. Is the proponent being offered the ability to connect to sewer and wastewater treatment? And if that's the case, what is the capacity of our new wastewater treatment plant to build out?
Yeah, so if I may, we have an additional 20 lots for building out there. So I would suggest that on the basis of cumulative effects, this single development on this single lot is not going to have an impact on our capacity. We also have new homes coming into play. I mean, we've got more than enough capacity in both wastewater as well as our water to be able to handle years worth of development. Never mind just this single development. Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess the question would be is if this were to move forward, I guess that answers would there be a formal assessment of the impact on our sewer and on our wastewater treatment plant?
Go ahead.
My understanding is that these uses can be quite highly impactful, and Interior Health did comment on that as well.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. So there is efforts in place to see for the industrial park to have sanitary sewer services installed there. We're not sure what the timing of that is necessarily relative to the timing of a project like this moving forward if it is eventually approved. I think there's a question there about whether that needs to be determined at the zoning stage or at a development permit stage. Typically those things about servicing connections and servicing capacity are certainly dealt with at the development permit stage. I mean, I think that's I know overall there's more analysis being done throughout the community, not just for the industrial park area, about just water capacity and wastewater capacity as part of as the new plant proposal as well. So I think those are all fair questions. We don't have a hard yes or no answer because some of those are more details, more analysis required on that. But I think to the mayor's point, I think there's generally accepted that there's general capacity for some more development, but I'm not sure we're prepared to answer quite yet specifically on numbers or like that.
Go ahead.
There's the Interior Health also commented on the gas station and the location of the aquifer that could be highly vulnerable to these types of uses. Both the gas station and the car wash with detergents, and then also the issue of location and setbacks from residences, from carcinogenic fumes from gas stations. What would the setback requirement be for the city right now in terms of gas station from schools and residences?
So if I may interrupt, Troy. So good questions, Councillor Cairns. The proposal on the floor tonight, the motion on the floor has to do with the rezoning and whether or not this particular piece of property would be appropriate to be rezoned commercial. The development is a proposed development, and it's 2 years down the road before there is expected to be any shovels in the ground. And I think, as we know, it could very easily change over that course of time. And getting specific about a specific piece of the development right now, I think is getting ahead of ourselves. We're not, the motion tonight isn't about the development itself, but it's about the zoning. Go ahead.
So you go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think the comment for me is that, you know, I think this is just, all this is doing is highlighting the importance of having these public hearings. And having two, I think is great. You know, I kind of agree with both of you. I think we're kind of getting the cart ahead of the horse here, but at the same time, we're continuously discussing the concerns that people have, and these are a couple that Councillor Cairns is bringing up. So I think it just magnifies the importance of us going through the public hearing process, listening to what people have to say, giving everything that to due consideration before we make this decision. So, yeah, I understand, I think, where everybody's going with this, but I think it's just really important to keep our eyes on the fact that right now we're trying to get an idea of what the community thinks about this, and a lot of us are just speculating right now, and we don't have the. I like the questions about the data, because we don't have a lot of the data that would be very helpful for us. So we're all kind of speculating, and it just magnifies to me the importance of getting as much of that community feedback as we possibly can.
Absolutely, and that's the motion on the floor is with respect to the public hearing, and it's
Understood. I was just supporting
what
what
the public hearing.
Yeah, and I was just saying this, and the issues that Sue is bringing up is making it all the more important. That's all I was saying.
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead, Troy.
I just wanted to quickly respond to part of that question there, that presently as drafted, and it's just for clarification, everybody, but presently as drafted, there's no minimum separation requirements or like that from the gas station use or fuel station use to any other land uses. That's not a requirement in any of our zoning as it stands. It's not part of the proposal as it stands, but again, if council so wishes, that could be part of the consideration.
Okay, last question, last comment, then we're going to move on. Go ahead.
So my understanding is that we're looking at a proposal, and that's what the rezoning is based on. So the information is about a drive-through restaurant, a gas station, a car wash, and a retail center in our industrial lands. And so it's not a land use planning exercise that we're going through that would be broader. It's actually based on this proposal that we have at the moment. And so that's what this decision is. It's based on that proposal. And if that proposal doesn't go through, then it's, we don't move forward with rezoning.
Yeah, actually, we're looking at a public hearing tonight. That's what the motion on the floor is do we move to a public hearing?
So we have just received a major staff report, and I think I need to have the opportunity to ask questions about the staff report. I actually wasn't able to attend the February 13th meeting, and I've had no opportunity
which you have done. You've had no.
I have a lot. Questions. I have many more questions. I have questions about the economic impact. I have questions about the letters that have been tallied, and want to point out the number of signatories, because there are a lot more signatories than there are letters. So there's a lot of key things.
So what specifically does that have to do with the moving forward of the public hearing?
This is our opportunity to discuss the staff report.
The staff report that has recommended the public hearing.
Right, and there's a lot of information in the staff report.
I will allow latitude. 2 more questions, and then we have to move on.
I'm ready to move on, and but I'll be speaking for a few moments in the next piece.
Fair enough.
Can I just butt in quickly? I've just had my hand up there for a bit, and I would
sorry, Councillor McGuire, I missed it.
One more opportunity to speak to this. I did ask a question earlier about the process around this. And my understanding is that if we don't set a public hearing, we do have an opportunity to go to some of those other recommendations within this report, one of them being to decline second reading. And based on that, my plan for this current motion is to vote against with the proposal of moving to decline second reading. I just wanted everybody to be clear on how I'm voting on this. I feel like new information has come to light within this report, including the traffic light. I've also had more opportunity to talk with different people within the community and heard more concerns and thought about this a lot more. And I feel like personally, I don't think that this warrants a public hearing. I think that it's a clear no from me and the people that I've been talking to. So that's just where I stand. I want everybody to know that when I vote no to this motion.
All right, thank you, Councillor McGuire. I think it's also important to make a comment at this point that as councillors, we represent both sides of issues when they come to us at the table, not just one side. Not moving to a public hearing on this or any other issue for that matter is not going to provide the kind of well-balanced conversation that we need to have, regardless of how strongly one side feels or the other side feels. We need to go to a public hearing to ensure that fairness is covered. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have attracted, by virtue of my age and my experience, a totally different point of view than has been expected here this evening. And I have so many people who are anxious to find out what it's about. They why can't we find out more about it? They're in favor of it, but they don't understand the process and they don't understand how they can make it happen. And what do we have to do? We've been a population of sometimes 3 and 4 generations of people here. And in the early 2000s, we lost 1,000 people. And somehow or other, we limped along and somehow or other, we did what we could do. And now all of a sudden we have 2,000 more people than we did a short time ago. And all of these new people that have come here are causing something to happen. They are causing things to change. And we have to open our mind to the fact that some of these changes are going to happen. And if you look at somebody that's going to put their money forward into some kind of or other of a business nowadays, who in their right mind would open up a garage that's going to have benzene all over the place when that's no longer a possibility? You have to build it differently than historically we have done. Who is going to be trying to build a situation like this unless they're attached to city water and sewer? It's not going to happen unless they're attached to city water and sewer. Just use some common sense in this and realize that there's room for us all. Competition is good for business. When competition comes to town, everybody pulls up their socks and everybody kind of shares the wealth and tries everything. I'd much rather try something in Kimberley than try it in Cranbrook. And the bottom line is that for me, I have had so many people come up to me and say, well, what's this all about? This is just crazy. We've just been trying so long to get some investments here, and for people to come and build something and do anything that will make things a little bit more progressive, so that when somebody comes into town from the south side of town and gets himself up to the ski hill without ever finding a place to eat, that they would have had an option. And the bottom line is that when we start turning businesses and opportunities down, they will stop knocking on our door. We will take all of the hard energy that we've spent over the last 10 years to get people to pay attention to us, to get them to come here and find their utopia and pretend nothing was ever going to change. Now that I'm here, I don't want anything to change. It's just, I'm happy here. Now, don't you be putting new stuff in here. Don't you be changing anything. That's just not the way of the world. If you're going to come here, we're going to become an elite society here pretty soon, because if we don't deal with some of these other issues that allows moderate and lower class folks a place to subside and a place to eat and a place to live, all of those things, none of it's going to matter anymore. So I'm going to be, on behalf of the people that have spoken to me, a very strong yes to the public hearing.
Okay, with that, I'm going to call the question on the public hearing. and that is the in-person public hearing on June the 27th and the telephone version of that on the 28th. All those in favor? Those opposed? Councillor McBain, Councillor McGuire, and Councillor Cairns are opposed. The motion is carried. Thanks for all the conversation on that, folks. There's much more to come, and I, for one, am looking forward to the public hearing. Okay, next up, we have a development permit for approval for 340 St. Mary Lake Road. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Royer moves. Councillor McBain seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So an application was received requesting that the height of an accessory building be increased from 6.1 meters to 8.4 meters for a property located at 340 St. Mary Lake Road. The applicant is proposing to build a garage with a studio above to provide a space for yoga and meditation classes. The subject property is, and adjacent parcels as well, are large and characterized by a steep slope. And increasing the height of the building is unlikely to affect neighboring properties or block views, given that much of the building is actually built into the slope, and it's also located a considerable distance away from neighboring properties. So council considered this application at the May 15th meeting and instructed the corporate officer to issue notice to neighbors. Notice of the proposed variance was sent on May 18th, and no correspondence has been received. At this time, staff are recommending that the variance be approved by council.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ariane. Council, questions or comments? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, first item under new business is the capital project update for the downtown design strategy. Wow, this was a lot of reading, and a great summary of the engagements and kind of where we're at. I have a question before you kind of go into comments, Troy, if I may. Are we going to have a delegation, whether it's Urban Systems, who helped, I think, kind of move this forward, but somebody who can talk to the kind of the various aspects of this? It's large, and I think council would benefit from a Q&A on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, we could plan to try to get an extra session plan where we can do a bit of an overview presentation of that. I'm happy to kind of walk through really high level today, but idea was to there is a lot of information there and probably more than we can kind of do in a short presentation. But part of that is to relay the findings from the first stages of the project back to council, back to the community, and make those documents and resources available for review and plan for the next round 2 of engagement activities and another community open house session to do just that and get ask some questions, share some comments, share some feedback about the proposal.
Right. Okay.
And the options being
That's
considered.
great.
Yeah.
Council, am I alone on this one? I mean, that was just a lot of information, and there were a lot of questions that kind of came up. And as you said, Troy, a lot more. Maybe if we were able to put this on a committee of the whole item, so that we could have an extended conversation, that might help. Just a suggestion. I will leave that in your capable hands.
We'll see if we can find a date that works for that, but we'll come up with some kind of solution.
Okay. Before questions,
And just a quick question, Troy. A count up of the number of participants that they took the data from felt really small to me. Is it considered to be a normal number to have gleaned all these conclusions?
Thank you. You got me with the question. I didn't remind myself of what the numbers were.
Altogether through everything was 252.
Yeah, what I recall, we were pleased with the response and the level of response received. There's a number of different ways that we sought feedback in round 1 through the Engage Kimberley site, where there was a good response level there, and through the 2 sessions there, one with invited stakeholders, which is very well attended, and also the later more general open house with community members. Again, we're very pleased with the turnout at both events, and to the mayor's first remarks, I mean, the part of why we're a little later coming back to council with this information is because of the volume of feedback received and the time we wanted to give it to come up with those next stage of draft concept.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think where I was going astray maybe is that it was the downtown area. Those are the people that are affected, right? Not necessarily the whole community in the same sense.
So sorry to hijack your comments, Troy. Why don't you go ahead and kind of give us the, the Coles Notes version that you were going to, and then we can come back if there are any other questions.
Yeah, I mean, not too much else other than I'll just clarify that so we're reporting back after the first phase of engagement on this project. So there's 3 documents attached to the council report that we intend to move forward and into the next round of engagement. So one is kind of the summary what we heard report from round 1, and which was used to help inform the draft downtown concepts and the draft streetscape guidelines. Again, these are draft documents that we're looking for feedback on. We anticipate that there's going to be some aspects that maybe people don't like in the draft downtown concepts. In particular, there's a few different options in some cases that we've created that we're looking for feedback on. That's not to say that those are the only scenarios that are going to ever be looked at, but we're hoping to invoke some response and feedback. And if there's positive feedback, that's great. If there's negative feedback or questions, then we can use that to refine a concept moving forward. With the goal of coming up with an overall draft downtown design strategy. And again, the whole purpose here is to help inform future capital projects in the downtown area. So again, reminding council and the community that there's a number of underground utilities throughout the downtown that are quite aged and needing to be repaired. We've seen, some of those projects have already happened, in particular on Boundary Street, and this has to do with coming up with a more cohesive and coordinated design for the streetscape when those projects are finished, so that we, one of the main themes or trends in what we heard report is this desire to kind of extend that Placer feel to other areas of the downtown. So we're interpreting that to mean, more space for people, certainly not, getting rid of cars or anything like that, but trying to make sure that we're widening sidewalks, making space for some small green areas, some gathering areas, seating areas, that kind of stuff. And just extending that feeling, trying to right size, traffic lanes and parking areas, that kind of thing. And try to make sure that we're balancing all of those requirements there to add some vibrancy and create that environment for more investment, more activity in the downtown commercial area.
Yeah, awesome. I think one of the other key considerations will be road alignment at, in particular, a couple of different locations downtown, which have been, problematic for a long time.
Yes, thank you. There's a few spots that are, unusual alignments as they are now, and there's some narrow sections of certain streets that, these are some parts of the challenging aspects of coming up with a fairly cohesive design there. But we've tried to identify the key ones. Again, if there's parts that community members feel we've missed on, we want to hear that feedback so that we can try to make sure we get that right. Again, it's not that this concept is going to be rolled out the next day and started to work. That this is to inform the next stage of detailed design on probably kind of block by block capital projects where we're going underground, repairing water, sewer lines, and then finishing up with the road surface and sidewalks and that kind of stuff.
So is this draft available to the public?
It will be after tonight's meeting. We'll be launching the information available on Engage Kimberley in the coming days. And at the time of writing the report, we hadn't narrowed down a proposed date for the community open house, but we have narrowed that down now to the evening of June 15th, and there'll be more information, assuming council approves our recommendation here, more information available about the concepts and the open house opportunity.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Troy. Further council questions?
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor McBain.
Yeah, and to agree with your point, Don, yeah, tons of information, a lot of information, really exciting when you read through this and you see some of the concepts, kind of, to your point, Troy, this design, coming up with these designs is difficult. You're undoing a lot of ad hoc design that was put in place, either by the mine or by the city. So a lot of work to be done, but it's really exciting. The one thing I would just request, what I really like reading are the raw commentary at the end that's all been compiled. I'm just wondering if we could get the binning for that, those raw comments to be just a little bit more specific. I was struggling with the lack of specificity on some of the comments. There were some really great, passionate comments, but I'm like, what intersection are they talking about here? Or, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of have a sense, an idea of where folks are coming from, but I really like reading the raw comments. I think they tell you a lot, but if we can figure out a way to bin them, organize them, or identify things a little bit better, it would be super helpful. But great report, lots of comprehensive information in there.
Excellent. Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about whether I know that we received that grant for the Plaza parking lot and whether there's been any consideration of the results from this having an impact on what we do there.
You want to take that, Troy?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we've received a grant for resurfacing, a little bit of redesign of the main Platzel parking lot. But for the most part, my understanding is, you know, the layout won't change too significantly at this time. So that's, you know, I guess kind of looking at that as a kind of a perhaps an interim kind of fix over the long term. There might be other changes that come out of that, but I think we've tried to incorporate some of that into those concept options there. You know, I think there's some parts that around the kind of periphery of that area that you know, there's still some options to consider there that aren't part of that grant. But yeah, there's a choice there about you know, fixing a pressing need, I guess, in that parking lot. And Scott, I'm not sure if you have anything else to add to that.
Further? You okay with that, Woody?
Yeah, my request would just that it be kept in the minds of whoever's running that project, that, you know, there may be some changes to the orientation of things in the future, and just to keep an open mind to that while they're paving and redoing surfaces.
Great comments. Thank you. All right, Councillor Cairns, go ahead.
Actually, it's a comment. Great point, great points, and great report. And to Jason, the commentary pieces, I've been noticing a lot of that is it is tagged on the map when you go in, and so online it's all, you kind of hover over and you'll see all the comments in location in situ, and it's very cool because there's so many good ideas. So thanks.
I must have missed that reference page. Thanks, Sue.
Okay, council, last call. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? It was receipt. Move receipt. I'm asking move receipt. Councillor Royer, thank you very much. Councillor Dunneback seconds. All the question. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Looking forward to next steps on that, Troy. Okay, next up, we have the public library budget request. And the motion on the floor is the council approve the Kimberley Public Library's 2023 proposed budget as attached to the CFO's staff report dated May 29th. Subject to an amendment to reduce the amount of the city's contribution by $2,933 to match the amount included in the 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan bylaw, and a corresponding amendment to reduce the library's operating expenditures by an equal amount. Mover, please. Councillor Royer, thank you. Councillor Cairns seconds. Jim, can you kind of parse this for us?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just note that Greg Bradley is in the gallery as well. You can speak to any questions you might have after I get through my spiel here.
Awesome.
So council will recall that this budget was before you at the April 24th regular meeting. At that same meeting, the financial plan bylaw was being presented for first three readings. So we made a determination at that time to bring this back to meeting after that bylaw had been adopted. Ideally, or by legislation, the Library Act, the budget would be presented to council on March 1st every year. And between the library and the city, we'll make sure that happens in future years, just so that we can get whatever the ask is incorporated into the budget deliberation process a little earlier on. So the 2023 in the current 5-year financial plan has a budget of $177,778 for the Kimberley Public Library, which represents a 1.5% increase over the 2022 budget. That's been the historical increase that's been incorporated into the budget, and that's based on the annual increases provided to other groups that receive operating grants, such as the Kimberley Arts Council, Kimberley and District Heritage Society, and the Trail Society through the community grants policy. So that's kind of where we get that 1.5% from. Also included in the budget for this year as a payment to the library is a payment of $5,839 to the library to account for an amount related to 2022, where the contribution was increased to 5%. But what got paid out was the 1.5%, and that got caught at the end of the year through discussion with the bookkeeper for the library. So what we've got in the budget is paying that outstanding amount in 2023 from the operating surplus. So what I'm proposing here is a bit of a compromise for 2023 is that, given the $177,778 that we have in the budget and that outstanding payment of $58.39, that comes up to a payment of $183,617 to the library as a contribution. What their budget is for the year is $186,550. So I'm suggesting that the resolution would bring their ask down by that $2,933. So they would have to shave their budget a little bit to match what we have in the budget. The amount that they're asking for represents a 6.5% increase, which is quite a bit higher than the other groups receive, quite a bit higher than the tax rate that council approved for 2023. And included in that 6.5% increase, overall the expenditures are increasing by 10% for the library budget. Included in that the biggest number is the wages and benefits. It's an increase of 4.5%. There are some other fairly significant increases. Just if you go down the list in the budget that's attached there, audio visuals increasing by 100%, books by 40%, periodicals and newspapers by 33%, recruitment 900%, small number from $100 to $1,000, e-content by 25%, professional development by 100%. So there are some fairly large increases in there, and I'm not contending that they're not warranted. I don't know enough about their operation to say one way or the other, but because this is a municipal library, their financial results get consolidated into our financial statements. So I think that when council is approving this budget, they should give it the same scrutiny that they would the municipal budget. Not suggesting that it should be a 6-month process like ours is, but having a close look at those numbers as well.
Thanks for that, Jim.
Yeah.
Greg, did you want to make any comments? Don't mean to put you on the spot. Yeah, if you've got comments to make, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to participate in this discussion regarding the Kimberley Library budget. I am Greg Bradley for the gallery, and I'm chair of the Kimberley Public Library Board. I also am joined this evening by Tegan Madge, who I mentioned last time I was here as our new director of the library. So welcome, Tegan, and she's also willing and able to answer any questions you may have about library operations. I do want to clarify for council, just regarding the shortfall amount noted of $2,933. There's some math there that's reached by applying the 2022 outstanding city contribution amount of $5,839 to this year's 2023 budget. The whole of the 2022 contribution increase at 5% was approved by council last year, but was not reflected in the monthly grant payments to the library. As the total of those monthly shortages over the course of 2022, that gets us to the $5,839 mentioned in the report. As proposed by the staff recommendation, we actually wind up with a 2-year budget shortfall for the library for 2022 and 2023 in the amount of $8,772, representing the $5,839 approved but outstanding from last year, and the shortfall of $2,933 proposed for this year. As noted in the staff report, the library has been the recipient of historical budget increases at 1.5%. However, it is the position of the library board that inflationary pressures do push this over that amount annually. The library will be increasingly further behind financially during a time where we're seeing increased demand from patrons and due to increased population in Kimberley. The report also makes a comparison of the library to other community groups that see annual budget increases of 1.5% under the community grants policy. I don't want to in any way minimize the valuable contributions that those groups make to the fabric of our community, but I do see the role and the services provided by the library as being different and therefore warranting a different budget treatment than those other groups. It's a basic tenet of library operations that there will be no financial barrier to a community member being able to access the resources being provided by the library. Whether it is someone signing out a book, an early reader joining the book club, someone looking for help operating an e-reader, or a community member using a computer to prepare a job resume, those are all services provided free of charge, as are all library services. The freeness of library services, although it's one I wholeheartedly support, is a significant challenge when we look at expanding or even maintaining our service offerings. In ballpark figures, the $8,722 shortfall being contemplated by the recommendations would represent 1 6-hour library shift per week over the course of the year. Now, I'm not suggesting that we're going to be cutting back staff time as a result of this staff recommendation, but it does have real world impact on where we go with our planning for library services. So I welcome any questions to myself or to Tegan, who would have to. Yes.
Councillor McBain, then Councillor Dunavac.
Yeah, no, just this is you know, I serve on the board, and just some support to Greg. You know, we as a city too, we have to keep in mind. I mean, we've been getting a lot of data recently about, you know, where the city is going in terms of population and that rate of change over the years. And you know, the library is trying to keep up with that and trying to maintain that level of service as well. And to some of those increases that were pointed out there that maybe seem a little bit magnified. You know, that was a lot of that was in response to cutting at the end of COVID, and then there was some staffing challenges that went on there that maybe Greg didn't mention. That, you know, there's a reason that you know, some of those increases might look more magnified, but they're really in real dollars really aren't that significant. But if you look at them in terms of percentage, they do look bad. But anyways, just providing a little bit more support there to Greg. The city is growing, the usership is growing, and the library needs to grow with it.
Councillor Dunavac.
Yeah, I just want to sort of concur with Jason there. It's a very, very important piece to have in the community for people that can't get to computers, kids and adults that have difficulties reading, all that stuff, to have somebody that they can go and talk to and use those facilities for free is huge. I just wonder if there's also opportunity from like Columbia Basin Trust and stuff like that for some grants for education, iPads and computers and that kind of stuff. And if we've looked at that at all,
Yeah.
But I believe that the library is 100% very important piece here.
Yeah, and certainly the CBT has been a very strong supporter of library over the years for a number of years and will continue to be. I guess the caveat with third-party grants of that type is they're often for operational equipment needs rather than staffing needs, or there's it's a different bucket, I guess, often with those grants, and so it's more the city grant or the RDK grant or the provincial grant that we use and assign to staffing needs.
Go ahead, Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, I think the library space is a very important space to our community, and would personally like to see a thriving library that supports our community and in having those resources available to them. So I would be in support of at very least including that $3,000, the 2,993 or whatever it was in this year's budget. But that's just where I stand. So I'll likely vote against this, but I just wanted everybody to know where I'm at.
Thanks, Councillor. Anything further?
Just one final thing to note, Your Worship, that
Yeah.
if you look at the budget page there, last year, actual in comparison to budget, there was a $31,000 surplus in the library. And that's not saying that they don't need the money this year, but there was a 5% increase given last year. The additional 3.5 did make its way to the library, and it was still under budget by a fairly significant amount. Not saying that it will be again this year, but.
Have you, has the library applied for or gotten or taken advantage of the community grants program directly? You know?
I'm not sure offhand. Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
The only reason I'm asking is I know some of these other organizations have in fact done that. So they've, there have been alternate sources from the city that they have received money. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor as it has been read. So I'm going to call the question on that. So Jim, could you summarize again what the motion is?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Just so we know what we're doing here.
So the way that the motion is worded, it would essentially, the payments to the library in 2023 would be $2,933 less than what's showing in their budget as a request for a grant from the city. So I'm suggesting that the city approve the budget as presented, less that $2,933 to the grant so that it matches our budget, and that there be a corresponding decrease to their operating expenditures just so that the budget stays in balance.
Okay, council, everybody clear on that? Go ahead, Kevin.
Corresponds to then there's another $2,900.
No, with the grant being reduced by 2,933, then they would have to find a $2,933 reduction on the expenditure side, just so that
To offset it.
Yep, just so that it balances out. Yeah, that's
Hey,
right.
sorry, one more question, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Hey, Jim, what's the implications if we decline this? To work that you would have to do here to reconcile things.
I would come up with a new resolution off the top of my head, which I can certainly do. I've been jotting that down just in case. We would have to fund any additional grant to the library from surplus because we can't change the tax rate now to collect additional tax revenue.
Right.
I would suggest that in there somewhere, there would be included in that resolution would be an increase to the library's expenditure budget so that, because if we give them what they're asking for and they maintain the same operating expenditure budget, they're going to end up with $5,839 going into surplus, which I don't know that would.
Right.
That's not the purpose of this ask, I don't think.
Councillor Roberts?
Could I just clarify, please? The 31,151 last year's surplus, is that figuring into your annual budget or is that in reserve? At the
Sorry.
very bottom of 22,
Yes,
there's a $31,151, I think it's $51 surplus last year.
right. Yeah.
Now, when you've created this year's budget, have you included that in your actual, in spending, or is it a reserve?
It's, I guess, a portion of it will go to reserve. There is a proposed 2023 deficit of 29,444.
And that's after the 31, like it's 60,000?
No,
No.
basically, the surplus last year
Uh-huh.
is to be offset against the deficit for this year.
Okay,
I'm not sure what the difference of that is, the 31 to the 29 with the loose dollars there, but
I just didn't see it added in there anywhere
Yeah.
as spending it.
yeah.
But you're saying that it would zero out this year's deficit.
That's about $1,200.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm going to call the question on the resolution as it stands right now. All those in favor? All those opposed? So Councillors McGuire, McBain, Cairns, Dunneback, and McCormick are opposed. I guess my comment on this is just kind of simple. It's $2,900. And over the course of the last 2 years, we've been up and down like a yo-yo on so many things. I really hate to put the extra work on your plate, Jim. But I think, $3,000 to support the library is, is the right thing to do. So that motion is defeated. Do we have a new motion?
So I guess Jim was going to make one on the fly, but I guess if it makes the most sense, Jim, from your perspective to use that from the
Surplus.
from the surplus, then I would move that we would find
think we
those
need-
funds and use it from the surplus. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got a resolution here, I think that it accomplishes that, so I'll throw it out there to see if this is what council's thinking.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jim.
So the council approved the 2023 library budget as presented, and further that the 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan bylaw be amended to increase the library contribution accordingly, with the budget shortfall being funded from unallocated surplus.
There you go.
So that gives the library what they're asking for. And
Okay, that motion is on the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? Yeah, no, actually, yeah, Jason moved it. We did need a seconder. Councillor Dunneback seconds. All those in favor? Motion is carried.
Thanks, Jim.
yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
council.
thanks, Jim,
Greg.
and thanks, Craig. Okay, next up we have a notice of motion from Councillor Dunneback with regard to the step code bylaw that was adopted at the last meeting. There are a number of whereases. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. I think council has reviewed exactly what that is, but I will read the resolution, and that is, therefore it be resolved that City Council reconsider its decision of May 15th, 2023, approving the adoption of bylaw number 2745, City of Kimberley Building Bylaw number 2620, Amendment number 1 for 2023. And that kind of in summary was to do with mandatory implementation of step 4 the step 4 code for January 1st of 2024. Okay, mover. Councillor Dunneback moves. Councillor Royer seconds. Discussion. Why don't you lead us off, Kevin?
Yeah, so the reason why I brought this back is I just feel like we're always talking about affordable housing and to put the pressure to move to step 4 being 4 years plus ahead of what the province is asking seems to be, I feel like it's putting undue stress on everybody and cost of building where it is right now. To push for this is going to put stress on young people trying to build, builders trying to build on a budget, all that. And I think that nobody needs that undue stress right now. And the people that are building quality homes. They are being inspected. It's not like they're building chicken coops. Pardon the question there, but I feel like it's undue pressure, and to be 5 years ahead of everybody else doesn't really make sense to me. There's lots of time for everybody to learn and get up to speed and get to that level, but I don't think there's a need to push at this time, and that's why I've brought it back.
Right. Thank you for those comments. Councillor Roy, go ahead.
So I agree with Kevin. You know, there's other things that are going on too. We got momentum going on right now. We got builders building nice homes, and there's no reason why the quality builders can't build stage 4. There's no reason why they can't, what do you call it, advertise. They can do it on their own if they want to at this point. You know, there's no reason why we can't say, hey, you know, we got the best house in Kimberley and let's go forward. But at this point, we're trying to establish affordable housing, and this would definitely slow it down considerably.
Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, so just a comment on the affordability issue. I feel like new home builds are quite often not necessarily affordable builds, but more likely new homes for somebody that can afford to live and build a new home. I know that I'm not in that market personally, and that on occasion alleviates pressure from the market and allows affordable homes to become available to people within the community. I'm just saying it's not as black as white as that. The people who are building homes aren't necessarily not gonna build their home just because they have to build to step 4, because it's you know, quite often people who can afford to build who are building. That was a little bit of weird use of words, but I think you follow. And the other question I had was just maybe a question to Troy around how significant the increases to cost are. I know that in the original report that you provided to us, I think it was over 2/3 you said were already step code 4 within the city of Kimberley, and now we're getting letters from energy advisors in the area saying that it's actually only half. So I'm just curious about that, as well as maybe any comments on how much more expensive it is to build to step 4 and what the requirements are to build to step 4.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the information referenced in our previous report is from in the last 3-year period, beginning in January 2020, when we first had the step 3 requirement. So all new homes that got building permits after January of 2020 had to achieve step 3 of the energy step code. And we're very happy to report that all of the homes completed since then have done just that. But in fact, that the majority of them, are 62% of those homes completed, and that's 82 homes that are under that program. So 62% of the 82 homes have achieved a step 4 or step 5 requirement. There, like you pointed out, there's some discrepancy between our data and the numbers provided by a local energy advisor. I don't know exactly what's going on there. I think that might just be that they're referencing projects that they worked on. So that might be why we don't have the same base number of homes completed in that period, or it might be a just different time period they're looking at, maybe, I'm not sure. But as for affordability, I mean, I don't know. I certainly can't answer specifically. I don't think there is a specific number that can be attached about what it costs to build step 4. What we've been trying to achieve since we started our program here to improve energy efficiency of new building way back in 2017 is trying to just improve that skill set in the local building industry, that local knowledge set, not just in builders, but in designers and suppliers of building materials and all of those folks involved in the industry. And I think our program has really proven successful in terms of each year we've achieved better results than I think the minimum requirements all the time. So I think our program proves it can be done. It proves that people can easily achieve the higher levels of step code. It does come, I mentioned this before, is it comes down to a matter of choices people make. It's not truly about the affordability of housing. This is about them making choices on how they design their house and what their objectives are for that house. So are they prioritizing energy efficiency, maybe, choice of materials, choice of equipment in that building, the size, the scale, all of these things, how they design and build the envelope, how careful they pay attention to the builders that are working on the project, so that they're making sure that that's properly air sealed and all of the design considerations that the energy advisors comment on pre-construction, that they're implemented properly. And that's how we keep getting all these projects that exceed our minimum requirements. So this is literally about showing leadership on climate action in our community, and as a leader in the province on this. It's quite we get that not everybody wants to worry about that quality and that energy efficiency of their home, but we feel that our program does a good job of forcing that consideration. And then when they work with local builders and people that have been involved in this, they find that it's quite easy to get through and deal with. So I think even some of the letters of concerns that have been submitted, I think they recognize and they state such in their letters about recognizing the value, recognizing the work that's been accomplished there. So, so we will certainly leave it up to council to decide on what they want to do here, but we stand by our original recommendation.
Thanks for that, Troy. Yeah, I appreciate
Councillor
that.
McBain.
Yeah, I guess,
Councillor McGuire. Councillor
you
McBain.
know, I previously had voted for us moving ahead with this, and I think, considering it again, I mean, you brought up the fact, you brought up choice, Troy, and I think it is. I think maybe in some ways we are getting the cart in front of the horse a little bit, and if we should just leave it to choice at this point. If most of the new builders are going to choose to go that route and go step 4, great. Then we're still going to achieve. I still think we're going to achieve what we want to do without forcing people to have to do it early. So I think given that choice, and like you say, if you get down to, if you're going to do a reno or you're going to build a brand new house, and our building inspectors come out there, you're going through the permitting process, and you're learning about the new guidelines and what step 4 entails compared to step 3. I think most people, given that choice, are probably going to go there anyways. But this would just be not pushing them into a mandate where they would have to do it. So on considering this again, and this is from somebody who's just gone through a massive reno and still continues to fart around on his house. I still like giving people a little bit of flexibility where we can. And so I'm kind of reconsidering where I originally stood with this.
Councillor McGuire, then Councillor Cairns, and Councillor Dunneback.
That's okay. I'm good. Thanks.
Hey, Sue, go ahead.
So thanks for bringing this up again so that we could have another look at it. I think it's always helpful to bring more information to the table. and go a little deeper on it. And so, just to recap, what are we looking at here? We're talking about energy efficiency to reduce emissions, making homes more affordable and comfortable. And in the energy step code, we're not talking about heat pumps. And this is coming up a bit in the letters that we're receiving. So building new is the only chance we get to design it right. Kimberly and the East Kootenay builders are the most skilled energy efficient builders in BC. As you know, I kind of tapped into a growing group of builders who are on this path, and return on investment is strong. They are achieving step code 4 and 5 at no extra cost, and at times at less cost. And a key point that's been raised, is that homes that cost significantly more to get to step code 4 or 5 weren't designed to be affordable in the first place. These are the high-end homes that are they are not being specifically designed for energy efficiency and affordability. So there are benefits to our community by being an early adopter. We attract grants, we attract training, expertise, and labor, and this helps industry advance on the learning curve. This isn't actually about being ahead of the province. Adoption is voluntary for a few years before it's mandatory to allow for the development of expertise here. By staying ahead of the curve, we do that, and we have done that. If we lag back waiting for the legislation to come up and kick us from the behind, then we lose all our competitive advantage. Step code 4 reduces energy costs, which is a benefit to homeowners and the local economy. More stays local rather than going to BC Hydro and Fortis. And when, design principles actually based on affordable building are used, then high energy efficiency is affordable. I think we should continue to be leaders and match our bylaws with what's already being done on most new homes in Kimberley and maintain our competitive edge.
Thank you, Councillor Cairns. Go ahead, Kevin.
I appreciate and respect your comments there. I also appreciate the fact that there is a step code so that there is a bar and that we are paying attention to the bars and wanting to reach higher every day. And as far as whether it's a high-end home or an affordable home, to be given the choice and to be given the education and not be forced into it where some people may not be in the position to take all the time for the courses. I still think that pushing this harder and faster isn't necessarily the answer and may push the opportunity for some smaller business people might not have the opportunity to get to that level yet, but are hoping and shooting for it. And I think if we force it upon them, then we'll lose builders that are maybe father and son or a single guy by himself. So I just feel like it's undue pressure for small business.
Thank you, Councillor Dunneberg. Go ahead, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Troy, at our last meeting, we were presented with a document submitted by Andy Christie, the building officer, and presented by Scott. And the final statement is staff are recommending that the proposed bylaw amendment implement the EL measure only opt-in requirement for zero carbon step code for permits issued as of the 24th of January. What does that mean?
That's with specific reference to the zero carbon step code requirements. So what staff's recommending on that is, and what was part of the bylaws, that we just adopt the very basic.
So that's different than the step code for, okay.
Yeah, the energy step code is more about the energy efficiency of the building and how wall thickness and air tightness, all those considerations. The zero carbon step code is more about what kind and how much energy are we using, and to ultimately work towards a zero carbon household.
And could I just further that question? Is there much of a difference with regard to the step codes if a person is building new or trying to renovate an older property?
Yeah, and again, in this case, what's proposed here, the energy step code and the zero carbon step code only apply to new construction. So presently, there's no requirement for those to be applied to existing structures or retrofits of existing structures.
Thank you for that.
Okay, kind of a point of process, I guess. I should have mentioned this at the outset. So the motion on the floor is for reconsideration. So we're going to vote on reconsideration. If the vote to reconsider passes, we will then go back and reconsider the motion to adopt from last meeting. So we'll take one step back, reconsider the motion to adopt. If it is defeated, or if the motion to adopt is passed, then the bylaw remains in effect. If the motion is defeated, the bylaw will then be stricken, and basically it will be up to us to ask staff to go back to the drawing board and come up with a new bylaw that's a little bit closer to what council's consideration is. So is that all fairly clear?
Point of order, I think it's the opposite. Can you just say that again?
Sure. If we approve reconsideration, we then go back and vote one more time on adoption of the bylaw. Okay? Yeah. So if it's defeated, it's defeated. And staff will have an opportunity to come back at a later point in time with a new bylaw that, may be closer to kind of what council's consideration is. If the bylaw is approved, it's approved and kind of remains in effect where it's at.
So, question?
Does that make sense?
So to me, it's that you just gave me three choices. So I just want to reconsider this, get it back on the floor again, kind of go through this.
And that's
debate.
what the motion, and that's what the motion on the floor is.
Exactly. Okay.
So the rest will be moot, depending on the outcome of that vote.
Perfect.
Okay. I should have mentioned the process up front, and it wouldn't have confused everybody. Okay. Kind of in advance of that, I do have a couple of comments of my own to make. I was the only one to vote against this last time, so it will be no surprise kind of what my position is. But I think it's important to understand that I'm not anti-step code or anti-energy. This has and it's not really black and white. There are so many different considerations that go into a particular design as to whether it's easy or hard, or whether it can meet or whether it can't meet, and that includes needing to use things like heat pumps. They don't have to be used in every instance, but there are some instances, depending on design and where it sits, where it's the only way it's going to hit level 4 step code. I think the province made 2027 the date of mandatory step 4 for a reason. It's going to take some time for a number of builders to catch up. What's really interesting is the high number of them that are already on board. I mean, as we've seen through the numbers, a tremendous number of those buildings that are already being built with our mandatory step 3 are meeting step 4, which is awesome. That basically tells me that the builders are getting on board, that they're not fighting this, or that they're not waiting for it to be mandated. I think we've had, what that tells me is that we've had program success without a mandate. And honestly, I don't see real benefits to advancing the provincial mandate, but I see potential unintended consequences. And I think I would agree with Councillor Dunneback in his assessment that, pushing the latecomers could push them over the edge. And at a time when we need more doors in the community rather desperately, whether we're talking new sale or new rental, it's just not a risk worth taking. In any event, that's my 2 cents. Okay. So the question on the floor is on reconsideration. We have a mover and a seconder. So I'll call the question on that. All those in favor of reconsideration? Those opposed? Councillor McGuire is opposed. Councillor Cairns is opposed. The motion is carried. So now we go back to I don't have the original motion. Maurice, do you have that for adoption from the last meeting? Sorry.
I have it handy here.
Yeah, we should read the motion out. what it is we're voting on. So, well, the motion is pretty simple from last meeting, and it's that council adopt bylaw number 2745, City of Kimberley Building Bylaw 2620, Amendment number 1, 2023. So it's simply that the bylaw be adopted. So do we have any further discussion before I call the question on that? Could I have a mover? Hey, Councillor Cairns moves and Councillor Royer seconds. So any last call for discussion? Okay, call the question then. All those in favor of adoption? Councillor Cairns, Councillor McGuire. This was the adoption as per last time. We are going to adopt mandatory step code 4 as of January 1st. That's the motion on the floor. All those opposed? That motion is defeated. So I think what would be kind of prudent here, Troy, is that we kind of go back to the drawing board on both kind of requirements and timing, and kind of how we manage through our builder and developer community to kind of move them at whatever pace we can move them at, education and otherwise, to, you know, toward getting all of our homes with step 4. Okay, excellent. Good conversation, Council. Okay, last item under new business is a check run in the amount of $620,338 to be approved as paid. Councillor Roberts moves and Councillor Royer seconds. Any, I keep forgetting the use of the term,
Unexpected
Yeah.
spending.
non-routine. Thank you. I have this mental block on non-routine.
It's a very normal month.
All right, anybody else, Council? Call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, last up is correspondence, and we have several items of correspondence to accept. First up, under 2.1, is the letter from Breaking Barriers Together Association and the Mass Casualty Commission report. Move receipt. Councillor Cairns, thank you. Councillor McBain seconds. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. And second up is correspondence related to the proposed development in the Marysville industrial area. Move receipt. Councillor Roberts moves. Councillor Royer seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. All right, that's it for the regular agenda. We do have 2 items in camera this evening, but before we get to in camera, we'll have councillor matters. And before we get to councillor matters, we have our question period, as we normally have, for those that may be watching online through our YouTube channel. Members of the public may call the following number: 800-741-7180. And when prompted, the meeting number is 2773-802-7799. And questions, so you can call in and ask any questions of council relating or comments or questions relating to anything on the agenda this evening. So while we're waiting to see if anybody calls in with questions, let's do our roundtable. And let's start with Councillor McGuire.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you bet, Woody. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have anything major to report that's council specific. But yeah, I look forward to getting back into things in the coming weeks.
All right, thanks, Woody. Sue.
I don't have anything to report. I'll just make a comment that during our discussion of the Marysville rezoning proposal, I did have a piece that I wanted to say that I actually didn't have the opportunity to say there. I'm not going to take that opportunity
No, go
now,
ahead.
but is that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, okay. Because
No
I
problem.
kind of used it up on asking questions and I'd appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, I want to be clear that I want public input to be fully listened to and fully considered. I want the public hearing, want it to be a fair process. And I really want to, highlight that my personal feel is that we have information in front of us that's pretty compelling at this point. And so I'd like to run through a few points, and that's the highway piece, which will change traffic flow, establish a bit of a Marysville before Marysville, does not increase safety for school and daycare. Interior health strongly against, recommends retaining current zoning, in particular to support community health through well-paying, steady jobs. The City of Kimberley staff have done their due diligence and can't support a recommendation for any further readings of the bylaws. Business owners are telling me that this is undermining their confidence in investing further here. Businesses who provide services in our community are also expressing that they're not being considered and their investment isn't acknowledged. We should recognize and build on our existing brilliant strengths. Businesses want an economic impact assessment. This is what I'm hearing. Our residents have already indicated unequivocal opposition, thoughtful input in well over 80 letters. That's from over 110 people. And a petition with 424 signatures came in today. Of this, 3 letters, 2 of them from the same person, were in support. This proposal has so many impacts on our community. Sustainability, local entrepreneurship, pollution, air quality, the waste stream. So that's also garbage because everything is disposable. Well-being, diverting market away from our downtowns, highway changes which aren't in the right location to help our school crossing. Why would we take scarce, uncontaminated industrial and rezone it for this use when we need these lands to build a sustainable economy so they were not only a bedroom community? It's been said that our industrial park is broken. Adding businesses that we already have an abundance of simply breaks it further. We need to fix this properly with servicing as industrial lands instead of compromising it. We need to use a grant that's specifically for servicing this area and then see what happens. Let's not trade off what we need for the long term. This will simply continue to affect our community spirit and attractiveness to investment if it's allowed to drag on for too long. It's our job as council to use the zoning to shape our future to keep in keeping with the spirit and intent of the OCP. We are not able to grow forever, so let's choose carefully.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Sandra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing to offer tonight.
Go ahead, Stephen.
I got a couple things. Marysville Day this Saturday. Please come to the dunk tank. I know that the mayor and myself are going to be there. I'm hoping that other council members, or we'll take Jim or Scott. We'll take anybody from the city. Please come to Marysville Days anyways if you don't go in the dunk. And
Is that this Saturday?
this Saturday, yeah, this Saturday. Do not miss Marysville Days in Marysville, please. And then track news. Oh, he's warming up his arm. Track news. We had a kid from Kimberley, Evans Moody, win the high jump in the regional district school. He jumped 145, which is almost his own height. So coaching is going well in Kimberley and Cranbrook. That's all I have to say.
Awesome, thanks for the update of this stuff.
We had our opening for the Underground Railroad there last weekend, and
You're open for the summer now?
we're just open for the weekends. We'll be
weekends.
open every day starting in July. So
Awesome.
just weekends right now. We have a 10 o'clock train that has been sponsored every Saturday. 10 o'clock trains are sponsored by local businesses. So kids ride free as long as they bring an adult. It was a huge success last year. We're doing it again this year. All the slots have been taken. Also on June 24th, we have a car show planned, food, music, beer gardens, and there'll be 7 trains that day. Kids ride free all day. So they're just gonna be looping. And there's also gonna be 5 and under pedal car race. By elimination, custom built. Steel pedal car, yeah. So we've also had the ramp up at the powerhouse extended, so we can cater to more people with disabilities. It's nice and big and roomy and big ramp, so that's really awesome. We're getting new volunteers that are coming forward, which everybody knows is a huge struggle these days, but we've had more ambassadors for Kimberley show up through the Chamber of Commerce. Just go around, we had, say 8 or 9 people show up. And it's just awesome to see people from all over the place coming here and showing interest in everything about Kimberley. How really the railroad is obviously a huge piece of why we're all here. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be a really
Outstanding.
year.
Nice.
Might I just add that the 10 o'clock kids show does not include the minor show? The kids ride is a train ride.
Oh, well, that's a bummer. Minor Bill loves kids. Yeah. Jason.
No, it's just tacking on what Kevin said. My dad's been taking over from Minor Bill, and he said the numbers have been great. So that's really cool to hear. For myself, I've barely been in Kimberley for the last little bit, but we did have a library board meeting last week. Where I got to meet the new director, Tegan. I understand she was in council today, so that was really cool. Other than that, I've got a health center meeting this week, and hopefully the next time we've got a meeting in council chambers, I will be there. But no promises. I've still got lots of work to do over the next couple of weeks on the road, so yeah, hopefully things line.
So who is it at Tech that we complain to?
There's many people you could complain to. I don't know if it'll do any. I don't know if it'll change anything though.
But don't bother. I get it.
Just don't bother.
Thanks a lot, Jason.
Yeah.
I too have been away for about the last 10 days. I had a couple of days personal time, and Columbia Basin Trust has consumed several days as well. I do want to make mention though of one visit that I made down to Marysville School. I was invited down to have a conversation with the grade 1 class, actually both the grade 1 classes down there. And it is so interesting speaking to 6-year-olds, well, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, I guess, about what a mayor does, what councilors do, about the civic process, and answering the myriad of questions that these kids have. It was enlightening, and it was awesome. Okay, do we have any calls?
There's no callers. If there is questions from the gallery, you need to go to the mic.
All right, gallery, questions or comments? Yeah.
My name is Sydney Pavla. I'm a 5-year resident of I came here for a lot of the reasons that we got called best little town in BC. And I do want to speak to the zoning. I wanted to first thank planning staff. Really definitely been put to the grindstone to make sure that what you should be doing. And I was surprised that we didn't take the recommendation as the first reading, but I also, from reading what I could of what is in this agenda, that you met with the proponent or the applicant recently to come to maybe a better plan within the zoning. Am I right about that? That he was not working with that?
I think what we were referencing is just there's been some back and forth about the transportation impact assessment.
Okay, so it wasn't about actually trying to fit him into a better, okay. So, yeah, and in the end, what I read was that he wanted to go ahead with the original proposal he put forward. So that led me to believe that, you know, we were offering some ideas to maybe make it a better, more palatable proposal to some of us. I really agree with the modernization of the language, not particularly the zoning. I think that right now I find that the public doesn't seem very well informed about all the details. When I first started looking through the, you know, the 5 minutes of meetings and stuff, I was having difficulties. I was directed and told that some of those things that I was looking for weren't even there yet. So I think that if we're having that bigger conversation, which you said, Jason, which I think is a good thing, it should be done more as a citywide conversation, revisiting the OCP. And is when we do an OCP, is that taken to a referendum, or how do we finally come to this is our OCP and this is what where we're going and what we're doing?
Very similar to the process that we're using for all of our, you know, bringing in bylaws or bylaw amendments. So we go through first, second, and third reading and adoption, and in between there somewhere, we have a public hearing. And it's all based on recommendations that staff bring forward for changes, council's input, and then finally through the public hearing process, the public input.
Right, and
So
that's
it's a
input.
fairly comprehensive process for
Right.
anybody to be able to contribute.
Right. So, and so that would be people like IHA and stuff in this particular case. I feel like we've zoned in on this zoning issue.
No, our OCP is our OCP.
Right.
And so that's strictly residents of Kimberley.
Okay, so back to the OCP then, I think that if we're having this larger communication about what is acceptable and isn't acceptable, especially in these lands that all of us have a vested interest in, then it really should be going back to the OCP itself rather than just this zoning issue. I didn't know about the Engage Kimberley website. Is the zoning issue on the Engage Kimberley? Okay.
Yep.
You know, honestly, I have been looking for information on how to engage, and I'm not seeing.
Sorry, Sydney, it is not on there.
Okay. So
Yeah,
is that
the
where we?
the Engage Kimberley is apparently not specifically for zoning. Go ahead, Troy.
I was just going to add that,
Clarify, please.
yeah, now that council has set a date for public hearing, we'll make sure that the public notice section of our kimberley.ca website has the background information and the most importantly, the notice information about how to provide comments or participate in the upcoming public hearings.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I kind of came into this late. I was away for a while, and when I did, it just seemed like you had the first, wasn't it an open public meeting as well? You had one of those already, correct? And it seemed like this was, you know, pushing very quickly, like I think it's the proponent, the applicant has a buyer, he has something he wants to do, and you know, all of a sudden we all have to start moving around and get our words in, like I was saying, Sue was trying to, you know, speak to this issue, because it feels like it's moving fast, even though I did hear you say no shovels in the ground, but once the application is approved and it's recognized, and then, you know,
Yeah,
nothing more.
so fair enough. To be fair, this application has been in for a long time. It's not like it's kind of a more recent thing. And
What would that be? Long time? How long?
roughly, maybe a little bit longer.
So many people don't know much about it. It's
Well,
shocking me.
So that's what the public hearing's about. It's part of the process. Public hearings don't happen at every single step of the process. What happens though is that we publish our agendas, our council agendas, and public is, you know, happy, like we're happy to have the public come in and weigh in on what's happening on the particular agendas. And if there's something that is of interest, to actually come and, you know, be here or, you know, be online to hear the conversation in the early days of what's going on. But it's not, you know, a public consultation process, you know, until we get to public hearing.
Right, and how much time happens after that public hearing, and how many people walk into that public hearing really hearing what their what's coming to it, because that will be the first time for people to speak, or many people
Yeah,
to speak.
there is nothing to push the process. I mean, depending on what it is we're doing. I mean, so as an example, the last bylaw on the step code came through first, second, and third readings and then adoption in the space of 2 weeks. We have others that we take time. In fact, I think Troy mentioned that with respect to I think it was the M1 bylaw, first reading happened a long time ago. I forget how many months ago, but it happened quite some time ago.
So the first,
Do I have that one right?
In both cases, the M2 amendments, as well as the commercial zoning with the restaurant and fuel station proposal behind it, both of those were received first reading on February 13th, yes.
Yeah.
and at February 13th, planning suggested you don't do the first reading. I heard Woody tonight suggest you don't have to do, accept the second, or set this.
No, that's at the discretion of council. and
Yeah,
we vote on
exactly.
that.
Well, that's exactly it. It's time to
Yeah.
talk to council, and I have sent emails saying, please, I'd like to talk to you. And I'm just, I'm just one resident here that would like to have more input and know that my neighbors and everybody else is getting the information. I've been in the agenda. There was a 35-page article today that, like, how do you find time to read all of that, plus everything else?
Well, we find time to read it because it's our job to do that.
That's right. You're being paid. I'm a resident,
Well,
and it's
This
hard
this
to
is
chase it
primarily a
sometimes.
volunteer, it's a public service position. So listen, I
think
don't
I-
mean to cut you off, Cindy,
No,
but
well,
we're
you
on
are,
a time
but-
constraint with an in-camera that we need to go to. Does
Right.
anybody else have,
But this was our question period, and we need to have it.
Sandra, it's fine. Can you limit it to one question and then we'll move on? All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There's a lot of latitude on the question period
Thank you,
tonight.
staff. I just want to, I like to talk a little bit because it puts me in perspective of history, where it brings us today and where we're going in the future. So I go back to the State of the Union address previous to this one, I think 2017 or 2018. Remember what year that was?
2019.
2019 was COVID, so maybe
2020, it was March of 2020 when COVID hit. It was a month before that,
Okay, so almost 5 years ago.
February.
Almost 5 years ago. And the focus at that State of the Union was industry. We're going to get money from industry. If it's the last thing we're going to do, we need industry dollars. We need to diversify our tax base. We're going to get better paying jobs. We're going to round out our tax base with industry. And that was fast forward 5 years. I think we're kind of sort of hearing the same thing. Commercial development. Here we go around the circle again. The only thing that hasn't changed is the OCP, which is our governing Bible written by the residents, but nothing's been changed. So when I think of 5 years ago as industry being our most important contributor to the tax base,
Actually, it's not. It's the least contributor.
it
which
is
makes the
now,
most
but
important to increase.
okay, when you can speak, I'll ask you. No, I'm mouthy, sorry. I'll just finish this up quickly.
Please.
Okay. So maybe the OCP needs to be changed as a suggestion to council, because obviously the direction that some people are going in is not the same direction as what others are going in. So to keep everybody on the same page, if there's any questionable things that happen or come up like this with proposals, then we have a guideline to follow by, and everybody can be on the same level playing field. So I just want to say,
Is that 2 minutes?
the last thing is, in closing, Kimberly is the best small town for what we are, not what everyone wants us to be or wishes us to be. That's it.
Thank you for the comment.
Thank you.
Mark? You have less than 2 minutes?
Disadvantage of being last. I'll try and make this really brief. I've spoken to most of the counselors. I'm Mark Raymond. I'm the managing partner in Stonefire Pizzeria and the Lyrics Hotel. And I've been quite engaged in this. I guess my major concern is this. People are lining up on either side of this issue, and really evoked a lot of emotion, more than I think I've witnessed in this community in a long time. And I think that's a good thing. The trouble I have is I think that a lot of the arguments are very anecdotal. I've put forth a whole bunch of anecdotal arguments myself. And I think the issue here is that, and to your point, Dawn, when we spoke, this isn't about picking and choosing businesses. This is about rezoning and creating more commercial capability within this town. And the real question is, do we need more commercial land, more commercial capability? How much? Over what period of time? And what's the impact going to be on the community? I've been advocating in a letter that went out today and in many of my conversations, an economic impact study. I actually want to revise that a little bit. I mean, I'm a businessman, so I'm going to think economic impact is what we really need to understand. But the reality is there's going to be social impact, community impact. It's going to go beyond just the economics. And my question to council is, why wouldn't we, if we're actually contemplating changing the zoning of the community, it's a very powerful tool and it can be very powerful in a positive way. And North America is littered with cities that made zoning errors and are now trying to correct that. In Winnipeg, where I am from, they just announced when I was there last week, a $500 billion three level of government contribution to undoing a mistake they made when they had to try, when they were trying to reinvent downtown in the 70s. So my question is, why wouldn't we conduct a study so we really understand the facts? I think it's great that we're going to have this public consultation. We're going to hear a ton of anecdotal opinions, which will be great. I'm not saying anecdotal opinions are worthless. They count. But why wouldn't we get some professionals to tell us what more commercial land will do to the future of Kimberley? That's my question.
Thank you for that, Mark. We'll take that as a rhetorical question for tonight.
Okay. I
Thanks.
was hoping to get an answer right now.
Thanks for the,
I was
thanks
going
for
to
the
put a motion.
comments.
Thank you.
Okay, I need a motion to move in camera. Councillor Royer, thanks. Councillor Dunneback seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, thanks folks for being here tonight. Appreciate it.